Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's session. I'm so excited to have our guest here with us today. He's a dynamic individual whose journey is seamlessly blended the worlds of professional sports and entrepreneurship. Our guest is former ATP tennis player who didn't stop at just making a mark in the court to found his athletic career. He launched his first direct-to-consumer business, showcasing his entrepreneurial spirit early on. And this venture led to his first business exit in 2021, a remarkable achievement for any entrepreneur, especially at such a young age. But he didn't stop there. He's now the co-founder of Igloo Media Group, a rapidly growing marketing agency based in London with a diverse team spanning over 20 members across 4 countries. And with a master's degree in finance from Durham University in North Carolina, right?
Unfortunately not. We have a Durham University here in the UK as well. But
Too bad, too bad. I had to give it a try. And with his history in a Division One NCAA All-American and team captain at the University of Memphis, Tennessee.
Correct.
Nice. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. So his passion about performance marketing and the fundamentals of e-marketing and e-market commerce, e-commerce. He even shares his insights through his newsletter, Dollar Commerce. Right?
Yep.
Something I encourage everybody to check out. It's a lot of fun. And while he's still waiting for his tennis career to take off, tell me more about this tennis career.
I think that was I don't think we need the podcast. That was my life story, so we're good, I think. I'm just trying not to get canceled.
You're a fairly inspirational guy.
No, that's very sweet.
We talk about you a lot in our team because you're so fun.
Thank you. Transition was definitely a bit unexpected, I think. It was 2018 when I finished playing that. I graduated with a recruiting class that all came at the same time. I think there was 4 or 5 guys in 2018 on the team that all finished at the same time, and only 2 of us actually turned professional after that. And I was on tour for about 18 months. Nothing crazy, but played a lot of futures and challengers, sort of the two of the 3 tiers that we have on the Pro Tour, and that was for about 18 months. And then it was from there we decided to sort of move and transition into through the influence of friends, sort of a direct-to-consumer world that we had no idea even existed, and it's a very different world to what it is now. But it was we seem to have built this community around athletes, which is quite fun. So we've definitely all got something in common.
Okay, that's amazing. I'm always excited to see somebody who goes from, striving in sports to excellence in business. By the way, with that great introduction, I forgot to mention everybody, Andrew Watson, my dear friend.
That's okay. Hopefully when I get canceled, this will be taken off air anyway.
No, this is nobody gets canceled just once. Don't worry about it.
Cancel proof. This is great. That's fine.
We'll see. It's not over yet. Okay, just kind of like one of the things I like to ask sports guys is, first of all, how active are you still in tennis?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely I joined a club here in London about sort of 4 months ago. It's definitely a part of your life you have to keep up, for me at least. I mean, when I stopped playing, I remember going to the gym when I stopped playing a couple of months afterwards, and just felt like I was just sitting there looking at the mirror with like no purpose or end goal. It just seemed quite confusing. So tennis is definitely my outlet still now for exercise, and have a lot of friends in tennis and so on. So I try. I mean, if I'm lucky, I'll get out there 3 days a week. If I'm not so lucky, it'll be like 1 day a week. But anywhere from like 1 to 3, 4 days. In the summer, it's great. In the summertime, it's definitely a lot more.
Okay. Any chance we're going to get to see you competing in Australia or anything?
I wish not. I think if I was at level, I wouldn't need to be in business. That I would not.
Would you give it up if you
Uh,
would you want to do both, or would you rather just be that beautiful sportist, or would you rather be the ultra
you
entrepreneur?
definitely can't do both. I think that's the challenge that we had as well, even at sort of lower levels. I mean, there is very few jobs in this world that are better than being someone who's top 100 in the world. If you're actively
Hmm.
being paid tens of thousands a week to go from the best cities in the world to the best cities in the world, just playing tennis and looking after your body,
Uh huh.
then there is no better job. That is a fact. So, like,
Uh huh. So the glory is a beautiful
yeah,
thing.
but there is a very, very steep drop off in tennis, both in prize money, both in tournament standards. So it like if you ask me today, would I trade it to be top 100 in the world? I'd probably think, yeah, that's probably okay. I don't know how my girlfriend
Uh
would
huh.
think if I was away 40 weeks a year, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I don't know what to say. The my sport for past 20 or 30 years has been entrepreneurship, and it can take over your life in terrible ways
yeah.
also. So, but it's another journey that I've enjoyed. Um, what is your okay? If you could give like one lesson that you learned from being an athlete that carries over to business, is there any, or is there one that just stands out to you?
Good question. Ironically, I wrote something similar about this sort of topic recently, and it was sort of talking about the transition from whether or not being an athlete actually helps you in business or not. And I think that there are definitely
Hmm.
cases where it does from a recruiting perspective, more so in the US. I mean, in the UK and the EU, we've got so much policy; it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, but it definitely does from a I think you're just used to working quite hard anyway. So
Yep.
if you can carry over a work ethic, then that's absolutely that's absolutely gold. I think it's challenging because I get asked this a lot, and I'd probably say over 50% of tennis players have a bad attitude. Like when you go
Oh
to
no.
tournaments and you go and watch, especially at the lower levels, you go see these guys getting in dogfights in Mexico, and it's like it's just extremely brutal conditions. You're playing for a couple $100. Like a lot of these guys are pretty heated players, so there's definitely
Uh
a
huh.
personality type in tennis that you don't want in business.
Okay.
We've worked with quite a lot of tennis players where you see their personality translate into life in business as well. If you know
Hmm.
that there's a guy who's very analytical, or he's quite quiet, or he's very composed, that might help in a business world. If there's a guy that's extremely fiery or extremely arrogant or has a terrible attitude, then it's likely that might translate to work as well. So, um,
Okay. I'm guessing you're one of those guys with a real terrible
yes,
attitude that's really
that's
fiery.
not a joke.
I can tell,
I
right?
was
Just by
very
talking to you, I get that vibe
vocal.
that, you could flip on a switch and rip out
Yeah,
a wall or
I was
something.
definitely very vocal for a while. I think college definitely helped, like, make me understand that positivity was a lot more valuable than anything else.
Childhood is totally different. We
Yeah, I definitely
once you're over 18, you kind of discover your roots a little bit. Oh
for
my
sure.
god, I was a terrible teenager. I was a rough teenager. I don't know how my parents still deal with
Yeah,
me.
I think your natural work ethic is one thing. Like competitive spirit, people talk about athletes being super competitive. Some of the most competitive people I know are non-athletes. Like I have some people who are immensely motivated in academia or immensely motivated in other fields that I would
Uh-huh.
take as a hire over someone in a different industry. So yeah, I think that can translate easier. I just think your ability to, like, well, if you've pushed your body for 6 8 hours a day every day for like 10 15
Mhm.
years, sitting behind a desk for like 10 hours a day is actually quite easy at the beginning. So it's really just a
Oh
case of,
yeah, at the beginning, to your body's like, I need
exactly,
to
yeah.
move.
So you got to eventually find a balance, but it's definitely a case of the actual workload is quite easy. It's more just the fact that whether or not what you're doing is interesting. That's I think the biggest challenge.
I think that's the big thing for all of us,
Yeah,
and especially with AI coming up, where we can kind of multiply the speed that we think creatively and express ourselves. It's going to become a bigger issue, especially if Elon, for example, is able to create some robots that are able to take care of repetitive tasks that are just mind numbing.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it integrates into daily life. I mean, as we were talking about just earlier, I definitely do agree, that AI is a mini industrial revolution from a tech stack perspective. I mean, it's definitely something that has been in the talks for so long, and yet suddenly overnight we all got launched this product that we could all use, and it happened so suddenly. So whether AI is going to be actually profitable as a vehicle is a totally different.
Well, yeah, we had that question, right? And I think it's a good question. Like, who's going to make money in this revolution, and who's going to be able to take advantage of it? I see it's obviously I see that governments will be taking advantage of it in interesting ways, and maybe militaries. There's a lot of research going in those directions and how they can enhance weapon systems
Yeah,
and things.
yeah. Actually,
But as far as
had an interesting call actually with a software engineer, a developer actually based in Canada, who's extremely senior like yourself, and he's discussed. I think he was working on a university project where using artificial intelligence for tracking. I mean, obviously, you have heat-seeking missiles and you have certain seeking missiles or defense systems and whatnot. And he was working on a project that simply allowed the product or the source, being, let's say, the missile in this case, or the trial missile, to lock onto a target. And actually, I mean, leveraging an artificial intelligence model to do that allows you to far more effectively trace something than using heat or using, I don't know, other
oh yeah,
technology.
and to deal with obstacles and to
Exactly.
predict possible likely paths that a person would
Right.
take.
Yeah.
It's gonna
Yeah.
obviously it can get dark
It can.
quick if you think in
Yeah.
that direction. So let's go away from that. Right, we're gonna like everybody's gonna be hiding under their
That's true.
desk by the end of this interview. Like with
This
their
has
lights
become
off. Then you're like, yeah.
Elon
Then you mentioned
interviews,
heat
right?
sink, and they're like, no, gonna be covering themselves in mud. It's like a Terminator movie, Predator movie. The but yeah, how do so I have people ask me like, hey Phil, like, can I put these same AI models, the entire model, right, and use it myself, right, on my own server, for example, right? And a lot of people want to do this, especially with voice models, right, text to speech, or just emulating somebody else's
Yeah.
voice. And when my current recommendation is, while there is open source models that you can take and download, it would be so expensive to do this that you put your business out of, you go out of business in the first place for a feature that's you just outsource to Google or OpenAI or to whoever, right? Versus trying to take this model and do it yourself. A lot of people are taking the open models and helping the research, tinkering with certain components of it, and just kind of brainstorming on it. But to run it yourself in a mission purposeful way, I think is probably a few years away. Now that said, there's a lot of AI going on to hardware nowadays, but that's very specific models
Yeah.
that I'm not sure is super reliable at a personal level.
For
And why
sure.
would he do it? Why would he? If you can just buy a computer that has AI on it, why would you try to train your own model?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting with the new iPhone, seeing how we can use AI in day to day life. I mean, just in terms of just the usability from a democratic perspective, how everybody could use AI just in terms of your daily life, essentially. But I mean, like you said, AI is profitable from one company in the world right now. That's it. And that one company, Nvidia, has like 10 clients. That's it. So like it is extremely tailored to extremely high value B2B markets, and it comes from hardware and a tech stack that's extremely advanced.
Yep.
OpenAI cost Microsoft several billion last year just to continue to run. Apple's come in and
Oh yeah.
co-invested, and it'll be the same for essentially all of the other platforms like Claude, and maybe some of the AI businesses that are actually design based, like a Mid Journey. They have a subscription engine that if they have a bit more of a cost effective, you know, I see a world where it's either going to be extremely high value, like NVIDIA
Mm-hmm.
esque data centers, making 80 90% margins by being able to do it at scale, or a
Oh
world
yeah.
where
Microsoft is saying to make it work for them, they have to get Fusion
Yeah,
working.
it's insane.
Like, come
That's
on.
crazy. Yeah. Or it'll have
Right?
to
Can you
be.
imagine? Like, for our business model to work and make some money, we have to have Fusion.
It's insane.
The technology's not even ready yet. I mean, I guess it's has sparks of potential
Yeah.
right now,
No, for
but
sure. I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be. I mean, they have to find a way to make it. I mean, OpenAI's closest profitable exit outside of data would have to turn it into like Google, where it is the search engine and there's an advertising engine somewhere, essentially. The
mhm.
subscription vehicle is not heavy enough. I mean, ultimately, Google is doing it for free. Like everybody has their own AI models at this point too. So, I'm not sure. It's being factored into valuations for a lot of these businesses, and yet it's costing them so much money. It's like less AI was better margins for businesses over the last year. So,
Oh yeah, looking at it, and Google's been investing in AI for 10 years,
at
20 years, or
least, yeah,
something.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
yeah,
They're they I think their gamble was that quantum computers would make it economical.
yeah, yeah,
Like apparently after quantum was able to hack everybody's key stores and everything.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully, no more, but we'll see. Yeah,
We'll see. We'll see. It's an interesting topic. The I think part of the challenge though is that the cost of competition achieving general intelligence is so high that if they're not close to being able to do it, then they'll be wiped out.
yeah, yeah. Essentially, yeah. I
So
mean, that's
I don't know if that's the value proposition, like do or die.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the ongoing battle. How do you see it actually? Do you guys see AI be particularly? I mean, people talk about AI can code. I mean, how well can it actually do
Mhm.
that? I mean, have you experienced it?
So good question. AI with OpenAI's 01 model, it can replace lower end engineers right now. So new developers can essentially either be replaced or they can be incredibly enhanced. Right. So you could do with one low level engineer, probably what would, three of them could do at the same level, three to five.
In terms of just like
Um,
basic HTML, or I mean, what's the even
uh,
more advanced?
with Python,
Oh,
with HTML, with, you name it, like any language right
wow.
now.
Okay.
So yeah, I did a task and I was playing with it because, it came out a couple weekends ago and I was just curious, right? So I gave it a task and a script for Python, and it would have taken me probably a day to get all the regex right and to go through and to kind of like play with it and to get it to output the way I wanted. And it did it in probably an hour. And I played with it for 2 hours just because, it was kind of fun and to tinker around and to,
Wow.
make a way bigger scope than I should have out of it. But literally 6 to 8 hours of work in an hour. And it could have really been literally 12 or 15 minutes if I was more focused and wasn't playing.
But so, do you still need to
So
be able to feed it the right instructions to execute that?
you have to give it the right instructions,
Right.
right? Uh, so here's the problem. You have to, with programming, and something a lot of people don't realize is you have to be super specific. You have to tell it's kind of what style, what architecture, um, what's the purpose, what's the outputs, right? The and it's this is a lot of work that goes into planning for a real project, right? So anytime we do a real project, we in my 2 hour foray into how AI could program, it certainly wasn't a real project. It was just playing around with the script, right? But a real project, it's complex. It has a lot of components. Before we shortly a while ago, we had a problem because the context window is pretty small, but now the context window is at least 128K, which is I can't remember, but it's like a novel. a good sized
Nice.
novel,
Wow.
right?
Okay.
Um, so it can hold now can hold an entire program in context. Now, could it be used currently to create like a full fledged like event application or a mobile app or something like that? I don't know, but it can definitely, if you break down the tasks into simpler tasks, it can take over and really walk you along a lot of the ways. Now, you still have to run it, test it, verify
Yeah.
it, say no, this isn't what I wanted, or this isn't working, and the code is probably 95%.
Okay.
Right? I did have to go in and edit some things, so you know maybe just by experience and used to debugging for so many decades,
Yeah.
it you would have taken a junior engineer a lot longer than I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
um
Interesting.
that's hard to say,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
um but it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because when I did it, it would do the code, and then it would go and explain it. It's like, hey, this is why I did this, and this is the purpose of this. Here's how the regex works. And it kind of did a tutorial on the whole thing. So I thought that was pretty cool, because if you are new to programming, right, you can do this and you can learn things throughout the way that would have taken you maybe a year or two to really delve
Yeah.
into.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I don't know. Is it a double edged sword, or is it going to enhance humanity?
Yeah. I think it's yeah, that's super interesting. I didn't know it would be that quick. I mean, I think right now we're still in a phase where humans are toggling with it. In a mass market model, it's, just increasing your efficiency of time by, giving you the ability to just do the same stuff quicker. If everybody's
Hmm.
able to increase their output in the same period of time, then ultimately it's, you don't have much of a competitive advantage. If one company is being able to output significantly more content at a faster speed, then obviously you have, an increased advantage. So I think similarly the way in, financial markets, if, AI can find a way to predict market movements, it's probably the most valuable solution of AI as far as, big sectors.
Yeah, I'm wondering how accurate that's going to be. I guess financial markets already use 50% of financial markets already using
Yeah.
AI
Yeah.
to some
Yeah.
degree. How far that goes, I'm
I
not
know.
sure.
Yeah, it'll be. I mean, again, it's. I think if everybody uses similar models, it'll just end up the market will just stay rational. So, I mean, there are very, very, very few funds ever that have even performed better than the market, right? So, I mean, you've probably got. I mean, I don't know what softwares guys like Renaissance or Citadel were actively using as like the very few outperformers or outstanding trading vehicles. I really have no idea, but it'll be cool to see how it's mass applied over time. I do think if it increases everybody's efficiency, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, from my experiment, what I liked about it was efficiency, and that it explained things,
Yeah,
right? And for me, the explanations weren't very
yeah,
exciting, but my biggest fear with AI coming in for the next generation or two is that people are going to lose the ability to think in a logical way that makes programming happen, right? So it's a skill you're not born with for most people, and it takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of work and personal development, just like a
yeah,
sport, right? And if we can replace low end engineers or beginning developers with AI and just kind of like take away this learning curve from them, it's going to be sad, because you're going to be missing out on those senior guys, right? That you really need to have that can direct the business process and direct
yeah,
the development process and the architecture to pull everything together in a meaningful
yeah.
way.
Interesting, actually, that's true. It's
But
almost like if it does replace the junior stack, then what happens to the senior stuff in the next generation or later?
yeah, yeah, senior developers don't stay around
Yeah,
forever.
yeah. Interesting.
They retire, they get wealthy, they decide to do other
Yeah,
stuff, they get bored,
yeah.
right?
It's a very, very high value skill. That's for sure.
it's it's a high value skill. Is it always worth it? I don't know, but the I think the real skill is in the entrepreneurship and taking any kind of product into the market. So here's where I tell my clients and my friends that you make the money. There's two places, and it's not in the development. You make the money in the planning and preparation, and you make the money in the marketing, where you realize all the gains and value of the product and get it out in the world.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a distant place when you've established your client base, you have your process down, and then you realize more money as you build your business model. Um, I shouldn't say as you build, but as you refine and make your business model concrete.
Yeah. Interesting. Nice. Is that something with, I mean, a lot of your, sort of existing clients, you guys, is there a component of that transition that you think some of your clients actively are potentially sometimes missing? They focus so much on the product that they forget one element.
Mm.
I mean, is that something you guys see?
The biggest mistake I see is they want to skip the planning. They don't at all consider the marketing, and they want to make the perfect product.
Yeah.
And then there's variations of problems inside there of changing your mind a lot before clients get to use
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
And it kind of comes down to the person's ego. If you're building an app to satisfy your ego, you got to look for that voice and in your head that says, this product that's going out, it's going to carry my name, right? When you say that to yourself, you got to say, okay, now am I trying to glorify myself, right? Or am I trying to make a really good
Yeah.
product? Right. And it's good to make that really good product, but you got to get a product out in the marketplace fairly quickly and get users to make sure it's working.
Sure.
Now there's ways to kind of do that ahead of time, but very few people go through the kind of research process to verify the business model before they get the product out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I mean, I think, even personally on personal projects, with apps or with MVPs, I mean, there's always another step, another feature, another, concept, another build you can
Oh,
deploy.
it's dangerous.
It is. I mean, honestly, and you keep thinking you're building a better and better product, and ultimately, if the market dynamic changes, especially in the fundraising environment, you could suddenly be stuck with a product that
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
align with what people are investing in either. So it's yeah,
Oh, yep. Yep. You get that. I've seen people to make a great product, and by the time they get it out, they were replaced by technology.
yeah, that's crazy.
Just
Yeah,
they missed the boat. I've seen people go through, make an amazing product, but they were afraid of what people would say, so they never got it out there. That makes me the most crazy, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah. Nuts.
I've seen success. I've seen fear of success. It's rare, right? But it's like maybe 1 out of 100 projects, or maybe even 5% for some reason. I've seen people who have this amazing product. They're ready to get it out there, but the family gets in the way. Um, often it's around women where maybe the husband gets jealous, or there's some kind of conflict coming up
Wow.
because the family isn't getting all the attention,
Gosh,
and it's
how interesting.
it's just kind of funny how some people can be scared of success, and that's one of the
Yeah.
inhibitors.
Well, I'm more pro success, so
Yeah, right. I want to get tired of winning.
I know, that'd be great. So one day we don't have to bother to think about winning.
I cannot. I like winning, but that fight to get there,
Yeah,
I think is worth a
for
try.
sure, for sure. Yeah. Oh, cool, cool, cool. Well, if I have any interesting projects and we're about to deploy an MVP, we'll definitely. You can tell me, Andrew, you've gone over the edge. You're too feature obsessed now. That's
Include me early on, but yeah. The here's how I like to look at it. Right, there's different kinds of MVPs. Right, the very first MVP is a survey where you go out to ask your potential clients, does this make sense? And when you're doing these surveys, here's what I find. There's people who do it better than me, of course, but I like to kind of make it a little bit obscure and to see if what I'm saying makes sense, right? So I'd say if I want to make a better screwdriver, right? I go to the hardware section of Walmart or Kaufland or wherever, and I'd say, okay, I have this screwdriver, and it's an enhancement over this, right? And it can also be used as a taser, and it can be used as this, right? Something obscure, right? Something silly. Now, do any of these features make sense? Would any of these features bring value to you? And what are your thoughts, right? And if like my core features that I was really planning to build in the MVP uh, didn't get the guy's interest, right? Over 100 or so, or 10 or 15 at least, then maybe I'm thinking of something that doesn't have value in the
Yeah.
marketplace.
Yeah.
But if I go in there and say, hey, I have this hammer that's also electric soldering gun, and also will tell you the torque that you're using, right? And people are like, oh yeah, that's really cool. I gave them too much direction. I misled. I have data that's not very valid, right? I got to kind of give them some extra stuff in there that I can see if these features inside that make sense, or if they're just being nice to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So that's my first kind of MVP. If it gets past that, awesome. If it doesn't, you should be concerned and you should look at your value proposition. Then the in our world, right? Figma, right? I love
Yeah.
Figma because it lets me do
For sure.
prototyping. That's very
Yeah.
inexpensive. Now, sure, you've already put in money for your discovery process and for your design, right? You've sunk that money. But at this point, if you're not getting good feedback, this is the time to say, hey, before I put into development and marketing, I need to look at my value proposition. And this is a place that everybody can do it inexpensively. And then the third one is getting that minimum product out the door, and start getting into the user's hands to make sure it's the value proposition. And after that, you should start
Yeah.
refining.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Figma's an amazing tool. I mean, even in marketing, that design stack is fantastic. I was so late to the Figma train. It was like I was like, this is a cool software, Figma. Let me Google it. And it was like Adobe's bidding 20 billion for them. I was like, what? How have I missed this like giant
Right,
design
right.
stack that I've been missing my whole
Out of nowhere, this is an Adobe product.
life?
What's going on?
Yeah, no, it's a great software. It's super useful. But yeah, no, it's I think that's part of what I enjoy. I think talking about sort of working with clients and projects. I mean, most of our clients, I guess, and I guess this is a segue to sort of the D2C space. I mean, that's where most of our projects, I think, as an agency come in. But it is really fun, when you deal with clients who are building.
Can you explain what D2C
Yeah, of
means?
course. It's sort of the direct to consumer markets. So obviously, brands that are strictly advertising online, brands that aren't focused too much on the retail engine. They're mostly online
Mm-hmm.
businesses. So, they're going directly from the brand directly to the customer. So, yeah, and that's I think as much as that's our biggest focus point by nature of what's referred to us the most as an agency. When we do have people who come to us for lead gen projects or software or mobile apps, which is rare, but it's
Mm-hmm.
happened. It's always fun because it just seems like there's a lot more, or at least at the early stages of building a product like that, is a lot of creativity, a lot more focus on branding. I mean, we've seen so many products be the flagship in certain niches, let's say, like software attribution, you've got Triple Whale, or sorry, tracking attribution, you've got Triple Whale, or for subscription apps, you've got Recharge. Like there are people who are in the right place, the right time, with not a necessarily superly complicated technology stack compared to their competitors, but their branding was pretty powerful, and timing was everything. So when we're part of
Mm-hmm.
projects like that, it's really interesting because there's just such an emphasis on branding. It's actually quite fun. It's quite cool. Versus, too many people are trying to create a replica of the next model that's just cheaper and more affordable for founders, and yet it's just the same thing. So, if that was the case, no one would be buying iPhones, right? Everyone would just buy a mobile phone that does the same thing theoretically.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's cool.
Brand carries a lot of weight. There's
Yeah,
it ties a lot of emotion behind it, a lot of expectation
yeah.
and comfort, and even tribe.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, as you and I were talking obviously before, we were discussing sort of the power of a brand versus the power of just a product, and I think like as an
Mm-hmm.
agency, the most success we've seen with our clients, at least the ones that have let's say, retain their business successfully or build profitable businesses successfully for long periods of time, even at smaller scales. It doesn't always have to be massive. I mean, your products
Yep.
don't always apply to everybody, but even to your niche, are people who focused so heavily on their community and the way that they communicate their brand and their product to an audience. There are so many businesses out there that actively just build another variation with another cool logo and another cool, like I said, sort of just a variation of another product. And it's just boring. Like, people don't ultimately want that. They want to be part of the brand. They want to feel involved in the brand, or they want to feel like it connects with them somehow. So occasionally we get some founders who spend years like developing something, like actually years developing a product,
Yep.
but sometimes it pays off. In fact, if you said to somebody, like, you have to spend 3 years finding the perfect product with the perfect audience, or at least close to it, and designing something that will transcend more than just a product. You get to build this brand around a community. At the chance of building a more successful brand for the following decade? Or would you want to take a shot at something in the dark that's a replica of another person's brand, just looks a bit more different inside a
Hmm.
year? Most people are looking for a quick solution, and instead of building something
Yep.
longer term. We were chatting earlier about people today chasing value over a long period of time, or are people chasing wins? I think so many founders now got used to the ability to fundraise, and say 3 4 years ago the ecosystem was very different. It's very hard to fundraise for a direct to consumer brand now, but people were chasing wins, and whether a win for somebody is just being paid by a VC to run a brand that they don't care whether or not it succeeds. They're just a great salesman and they
Yep.
managed to close a round. Or whether or not a win is to sell secondary to the VC. So you have chips off the table, which is really just a game of playing chicken, just to try and tell the investor that you still invest in the brand. Whether that win is actually,
If the goal is to get 25 million
yeah,
this year, so then 2 years you get 50 million, and then you can,
right.
right, and you made nothing of value the
I
whole
know, yeah.
time.
I always refer to like that hilarious WeWork chart that has like the red arrow that goes up going EBITDA, and it's like the most amateur graph ever. And I'm just like picture Newman like selling that to his VCs as a concept.
Yeah, yeah, and they're like, I got nowhere to put
I
my
know,
money. It's kind of like I can vote for this idiot or
I
this
know.
one. I mean,
It's
come on.
just SoftBank. I think
VCs are
it's
in like the same
SoftBank
boat.
to a T. I mean, they did the same thing with a bunch of other, um, at least in their vision fund. But yeah, so we see, and then wins for some people are genuinely building a brand. Like, we have some founders who will openly say, "I'm never selling this business. Like, it is something I dedicate my life to." And that's really cool. There we actually see value build over time because the quality of the
Hmm.
product is reflected, their attention to
Yep.
detail with retaining their clients is reflected. If you can
Hmm.
build a product that retains people for longer than a few payment cycles, that is the goal, I think.
Yep. That
It's
retention is a
it's
big
so
deal.
hard to build a product that, as a business, makes you profitable when you buy just it one time. Like a bike. How many times does someone buy a mountain bike? Once every X period of time. It's very rare, unless you're a super enthusiast.
Hmm.
Whereas if you're in fashion, I love working with boutique fashion brands that are pretty high end, pretty expensive, because if they have a
Yep.
really cool product, people will loyally come back season after season. So, as
Yeah, they've built a tribe.
exactly, yeah, you build a cult, and I think there's a couple good LinkedIn guys who talk about your goal as a long-term founder should be to try and build this cult around your brand, and having people actively come back for such long periods of time is where the value is built. I mean, we have a couple of clients who have a retention rate of like over 90%. Like, that many people come back and buy 3 4 5 6 7 times. At that point, you've got to think, should I be treating my business like a subscription product? The way
That's a good
Apple
question.
knows their
Yeah.
lifetime value of each person who buys an iPhone is 30 years. Like, it's so rare once
Hmm.
you're in Apple's ecosystem that you're going to jump out of Apple's ecosystem, because your entire
Yeah.
house is then Apple integrated. So the same way when people shop at, like, personally, I'm not a huge shopper, but if I go to one brand and I buy a jumper or a quarter zip or a jacket or something that I really like, I'm probably going to go back 3 4 times if it's a good experience. So, building on a subscription model as a direct to consumer business, even if you're not a subscription product at its core, I think is where we're seeing such strong value with our best founders, I think.
Yeah, investors all are right now. Investors are really looking to see if you've built in a subscription
Yeah.
model to
Yeah.
your system.
Sure.
I haven't seen hardly any VC activity compared, like you said, compared to
Yeah.
before COVID.
Yeah.
The I
Can we
haven't
still
seen
say
much
that? Is
activity,
that a
right?
thing?
Yeah, I don't know, right? But before it used to be like, yeah, you could get VC capital, right? Now I almost see all of it in bootstrapping and angel investors, and um and then some companies just did good, built their brand, and can go just really just go public. um there's so much risk to that nowadays to to try to go
For
public,
sure. Yeah, and
right?
there's very few
But
IPOs. I mean, the IPO index is still really flat. I mean, 2019 through 21 was crazy, and then 22, 3, and still 4 is still pretty flat, I think. And I don't think that's just direct to consumer. I think that's most markets, to be honest. So it's interesting. We're seeing the the S&P at all time highs, and the indexes are climbing, and yet deal flow is basically flat. So it's
yeah, super flat, consistent in a way. um So I'm happy that it's at least flat and not crashing,
right.
right? Because if it's flat, that means there's still a consistent amount of new activity coming in.
Yeah, and I think AI is in somewhat D2C 2.0. We saw a crazy surge during the pandemic of of businesses not only going public, but valuations in technology during COVID were at all time highs. It was crazy. 2021. I mean, we saw the initial crash, and then things excelled, and in 2022, when everybody realized none of these companies were making money, that's when we saw a huge, arguably a recession, despite the way they didn't want to call it that, but we could
Yeah,
probably
right,
call
right.
it
That wouldn't
that.
be very politically correct.
And we're seeing it similarly with AI. So I don't know if the bottom's going to fall off at some point. I hope not, but no, we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people, out of necessity, are going to have to try to find economies of scale, and I think AI brings that to a degree. How much of a degree and at what cost? I wonder.
Yeah, I know.
I wonder how far that would
Yeah,
go. The people that I've seen use AI fairly well, they've created a lot of content. They have a certain kind of brand behind them already, and they use it to kind of multiply their voice. Right now, AI is in a very interesting place where it can take your style, your examples, the way you talk, and it can integrate that for you. You still have to go through and edit it because still kind of like not human, right? You kind of get that smell, but it gets it close for you where you'd be normally, I'm not an amazing content writer. So when I write content, it's like hours
yeah,
and, you know, 20 revisions, right? But when I use AI to do, when I put in my voice and my style and my transcripts and my examples and, prompt it, well, it gets from like, say, 10 hours of work to like, 2 or
yeah,
3. Is that a big savings based off the kind of work that has to go into it?
yeah.
For me, it is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I
But
agree. I mean, I think that's one of the few things, in at least in advertising, that AI is useful for, is content. I mean, people are. It's the problem I think we're having now is AI content is quite obvious. I'm seeing
mhm.
that I've pretty much banned our team from using the word elevate. Because if you ask AI to give you any description or any copy whatsoever, it's always elevate something, elevate this, elevate. I don't know why. It just happens to be like one of its core
Uh-huh.
prompts. So I basically said to team, guys, like, I'm reading this copy and I get it. It sounds like it makes sense, but I think the natural consumer response now knows, after using OpenAI themselves for so long, that anytime you ask AI to describe something in a nice way, it says elevate X. So we need to make our copy
Uh-huh.
sound a bit more organic for our brands, so we can use
Make it
AI as a
organic.
foundation, And then, like,
Right.
actively, we still needs another more organic tweaking. I mean, there are some of our founders that refuse to use it because it's so hard for it to get the voice of the brand, especially if you're looking for
Super hard.
sarcasm, or
Yeah.
you're looking for humor, or you're looking for stuff that's like retro or hip or a bit more on brand. That's where it becomes challenging. Um,
Yep.
so it,
It can't do it. From what I've seen, it can't do it unless you give it those examples of how you do
Right,
it.
with fixed instructions, exactly. And at that point, if you're designing
Yep.
ad copy for one ad, let's say for Facebook, you can just do it yourself in that time. If you're writing like an
Yeah, just do it
SEO
yourself.
article or something that's, 800 words, then that's where it obviously saves you a lot more time. So it doesn't take long. I mean, if you're leveraging softwares to see what copy styles have worked well for the brand, where your engagement rates and are doing actively better, whether it's long form, short form, medium form sort of copy, then you can definitely probably do it yourself fairly quickly. So
Okay. What's your stand on, banning AI in your business or using it as
we
a
can use
tool?
it. We are using it. I mean, I think you have to get with it. Otherwise, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards, as the saying goes. So I definitely think that, we need to be conscious of it. Use
Mhm.
softwares that,
You could be like one of those artistic artists that says, "I won't buy paint. I'm going to make it from my own blood," and go out in the forest and procure what I need and kill bugs
and
and
why
stuff.
did I just picture like someone super French saying that? I don't know why. But it's yeah, I think we definitely need to use softwares that leverage AI for sure. Like Data Dive for Amazon, we partnered with. That's a great platform. Motion for Facebook is great, and some of our software partners, we need to use it, I think. In terms of sort of day to day, it's absolutely fine. Generally, I really do encourage the manual layer of editing. I don't want our senior directors to get complacent using AI at the cost of poor copy. So it's very important for
Mhm.
us to make sure that if we are generating copy for our clients, that there is a manual layer of proofing. So as far as marketing goes today, that is pretty much one of the main things that we are doing. I think if you can build creative using AI as well, that's a huge advantage, but it isn't cheap to do that because you need to hire somebody to actively build creative that's tailored to a brand, which requires
Yep.
you to then teach AI how to design about that brand. So it's
Mhm.
actually less cost effective to get a subscription to Midjourney, train somebody in house to be a designer that
Yep.
strictly works with AI based softwares like a Midjourney to design creatives for your brands than it is to pay a graphic designer with a branding doc and say, build this creative using all of this information. Here's the creative brief. Because it might take them a couple hours to do the turnaround. Whereas to actively train
Mhm.
Midjourney to design the demographic of the audience that's in your creative to do XYZ will take longer. So it needs to
Mhm.
get faster in that regard. So we're actively testing it. I mean, we've tested some AI designs. I have a friend who's built a website using AI, and all of his creatives are AI. And I would have no idea because he's done it so well. But that's taken him months and
Yep.
months and months of training the software. This is how I want my user to look. This is how I want them to act. This is how,
Uh-huh.
and that takes a really long time. So I think that's,
A lot of that stuff you do anyways when you're doing brand building. So when you're building your
yeah.
brand, if you do it, okay, well, let me ask, right? I have my brand building process, but you're a master at this. So what is let's not be like about Phil, who's like a dogfish compared to you, right? Tell me how would you go about building a brand from the beginning, or do you think it's worth it
Yeah.
if a company's just about to get their e-commerce shop out there? Is making a brand
Yeah, good question.
meaningful?
Yeah, I mean, I get asked if I'd actually build a brand again quite a bit. And I like being part of a brand's journey. Whether or not I would build my own, I think I would definitely lean on the longer narrative, where it would take me longer to find a perfect product. Maybe I'm grateful, I can be in a situation to do that. I know some people really want to build a product a lot quicker, which is very different. So, I would
Mhm.
definitely, it would be really hard building a direct to consumer product. I mean, I think like I would look to build something that's definitely high value, high margins, less susceptible to price wars, really unique design and branding, I think that flies under the radar for some people building businesses, is how powerful design can be. I've just finished reading, I think it's one of the Apple books. Is it After Steve or something? I think it's called. And it talks a lot about the power of design and influence, and how Dieter Rams, the designer of Braun, was the inspiration behind Johnny Ive. And I never thought of it that massively. And I think that's one of the things we had with our old company, was for us it was just about volume and volume and volume, and sometimes you neglect the bits that carry so much organic value. So if I built a brand, I would definitely focus really heavily on design and presentation, and how you can draw people into that cult, like I was talking about. How can you target a particular audience group and make your brand seem different? Develop components of that brand that make people feel like they're part of a club, you know um,
Hmm.
and then build from there, and sort of go from there. But it's almost impossible to build a direct to consumer brand now without a serious investment. Like it's the concept of drop shipping is basically dead. Like, your margins as a
Hmm.
drop shipper back in the day were
I've heard
yeah,
that.
I mean, you used to get all these hilarious videos. I've noticed they've kind of died out, which is good. Maybe my ad engine's just targeting me differently. It was like, some guy sitting in a private jet going, "Hey, you want to learn how to drop ship? Here's how I make $1 million a month on my Shopify store." And I'm thinking, okay, so a
Sure.
private jet costs $30 million after tax. So you've got to be making like hundreds of millions a year from drop shipping, where your margins are like 15%. It's impossible. So
Uh huh.
drop shipping is not an engine anymore. Like, it's just too expensive to advertise for it. It's too expensive to build products.
Oh yeah, with Taboo now. Is it Taboo or
Probably. I
Tem
mean, yeah, people probably. Oh, Temu. You mean the platform? Yeah,
Temu? Yeah, the Amazon
exactly.
competitor.
Yeah. I mean, again, like, it's such a volume game. It's almost not worth the energy. Like, I'd rather go get a 9 to 5 job than be a drop shipper tomorrow. I think, like, in a good way. Like, not like nothing against 9 to 5 jobs. I would just much rather do that than
Right?
build a dropship
You
business.
know, with a small margin, right? You got to deal with returns. You
It's
got to deal
horrible.
with
Yeah,
support and all kinds of stuff. I can.
yeah. I don't.
I mean, I was reading the story of Temu, and it's like the prices are so low that a lot of their distributors are going out of
Yeah,
business.
insane, crazy.
And I'm like, yeah,
No, it's
how do you compete with that?
I know. Yeah, it's insane. So I do think, like, a private label that has north of 70% margins, that is an amazing product with a strong lifetime value, is the goal. And I would rather spend a year or two
D2C.
building some brand in that niche than I would trying to do it a different way. Um, and if I look for funding, it would be a small round, probably not a big round.
Uh
As we
huh.
were talking about before, and you can fundraise too much. Ultimately, remember, people, and actually, there's a few good.
That's one of the biggest mistakes is either way either getting way too little, right, which doesn't help you in the first place, and now you have investors to deal
Yeah,
with, or getting way too much
yeah,
money and not being able to invest it properly and essentially wasting uh,
yeah,
wasting the money, having to pay back more than you can
yeah, for
afford.
sure, exactly. And remember, investors get paid back first. So if you raise 20 million, whatever it might be, and the valuation of your business, if they decide to sell the asset, is worth less, then you've actually destroyed value over time. You're not making value. That's value destruction. So you, that's where, if you as a founder in a situation where you can sell secondary to maybe actually take a little bit of chips off the table, you've got to try and convince the investors that, hey, look, like, I'm still really invested. It's just, I'm strictly salary based. It's too incentive heavy. I'm working all these hours. It would be good if I could sell 100K of my shares, and ultimately I'll still stay on
Hmm.
board and maintain a strong percentage. But I just want to take some off the table. And you kind of play that game, I think, with investors, knowing potentially that you could be in a situation where the business's valuation doesn't exceed how much is raised. And at that point, your investors are paid back first. Your priority shares are definitely less than the investors. So, um,
Yep.
You definitely want to be in.
And some of this comes from that book you mentioned, After Steve, How Apple Became a $1 trillion
Yeah.
company and lost its soul.
Yeah, I'm not sure I 100% agree. They lost their soul. I think it's so hard to keep building. I also don't think Tim Cook gets enough credit for taking a business that's like 300 billion to like $4 trillion.
Oh, right.
But they are a service business, I guess now. But it's yeah. So I do think founders who raise you know, your first raise, you could be on six figures, and that in itself is a win for people. And your second raise, you could be on 200K, and for some people, that's a win. So it really just is a case of like, do you want to build a business that's really high value and super profitable, or do you want to build a business that's a shitty business but it does high volume and you get paid to do it? I think that's like an ongoing discussion so many people have in the space. And I've said
Yeah.
I was
What's your
so new
goals?
to it. I mean, like when we were running our business, it was a way to fund our tennis career. That's how it started. It was a small business and
Hmm.
still was not a big business when we exited, but it was, just a vehicle for us. And suddenly we got thrown into this world of working with roll ups and big direct to consumer engines. And I had no idea what the space was about. And
Uh huh.
suddenly getting exposure to the venture side, the investment side, and, how we had all these ideas about being passionate towards projects and brands, and it just seemed so black and white. It was just what's on the P&L. It just seemed like it was very sort of that was the priority, and it was a very different world and transition that we were exposed to. But maybe it's part of the reason why I'm a bit more pragmatic now. I'm not so sure.
Well, I think you have to. First of all, in the market when it's hard to get cash flows in, you have to be a little more pragmatic, anyways, right? If it's harder to raise money, the my favorite clients are the ones that say, well, so there's two extremes, right? There's ones I like. I'm building this just to sell it, and I'm going to cash out in like a year and a half. And then the others are like, I'm never going to sell this. I'm going to bury that company with me, right? Or give it to my grandchildren. The I like the ones like closer to the middle, more a little temperate, where it's like, okay, I'm going to build it to keep it, in the long run, maybe forever, or at least until I'm ready to retire. And I'm going to make it so it can sustain itself and to grow and to provide great value and to be something I'm proud of, even though it doesn't have to start like world class perfection, right? And I'm going to get it there, right? Where they say they build in the business knowledge, knowing that they may get sick
Yeah,
or they may have to go away, so that they're going to build it in a way that it's as self-sustaining as possible, but not that they're like washing their hands
for
of it.
sure. I think delegation is a real skill set. I think that's hard. I think that's one thing as a founder to
Super hard.
to delegate to people that can take control of their divisions is really challenging. I think that's definitely one of the things that personally I'd like to be able to do more of. I think is be able to delegate
Hmm.
to skilled individuals in our team, or to handle certain things, and trust that it'll be done on time. And it's hard to manage expectations as a founder. You'll always want to turn on your laptop at 11 o'clock at night and check in and send a few messages to clients so they know you're working,
And that's okay,
to do the odd
right?
bits
This
and pieces like that. So I don't necessarily expect other people to do the same. If I hired a CEO, I would probably expect that to be done. I think at that point, that's where, I think we were talking about this before as well, is, how hard it is as a potential investor to buy a business that's too founder reliant, and that's where
Yep.
so many.
You can't.
It
It's
is
scary.
for sure, and I think that's where if I fundraised a vehicle, I would buy businesses that have such little founder exposure. I think, like I mean, your relationship with different businesses is so different. So I don't care. Like, for example, my accountant, right, or your accountant. Like, do you care about how your accountant runs their accountancy? No, you just want one that gets the job done. They give good advice and they get it done on time, and that's it. It's really just a case of like
Yep.
who's a more expensive or a better value accountant that is just timely, right? Whereas if you have a fitness trainer, that in itself is like you want that to be super personal. If that person leaves, your entire atmosphere changes around that exercise. So I definitely, it's and that's something we've seen, like working with roll ups as well, is You buy a business. Founders are great at selling the product to you. So, you acquire the business thinking some of it might be automated. The money's out the door, and then suddenly founders lose motivation. It's extremely challenging for the business to continue to run the way it was, to invest enough time.
Or there's conflict between your vision and their
Right,
vision.
exactly, massively. You're actively looking to push something that the one thing we see is founders wanting to release new product. Investors don't necessarily understand that you might have to evolve. And, if you've got a product 1.0, you need to release a 2.0, and that might cost a bit of money. So, we were very, very fortunate that, our investors were really supportive of doing that, and we did, we were allowed to sort of launch our own mini private label at some point, but it's definitely, yeah, definitely that ongoing conflict is one of the biggest challenge, if not the biggest challenge of buying companies is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you talked about a lot. You covered a lot right there. The I started my journey on really learning how to delegate probably 12 years ago when I really started trying to teach people things.
Yeah,
And through the learning to teach people things is when I really started learning how to delegate. But it was for me, it was a journey. I
yeah,
started late.
yeah,
Probably I was 35 when I really started focusing on it around there.
yeah. No, delegation's definitely a challenge. I think it's yeah, I mean, I'm still working on it, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe everybody will hate me once I start to delegate. So
Oh, they're going to hate you one day, love you the next day. This is
yeah,
normal.
yeah.
This is what it is to
I
be an
know. I
entrepreneur.
guess you sign up for it. So
Right, right, right. You know, and this is good. This is what makes you a man, right? If everybody loves you, you're not doing something
I
right.
know. Yeah, we'll see. Be interesting to see what we keep building. Same way with you guys. It'd be cool to see what you. I think you just build things or you get involved in projects almost by accident, right? I was having this conversation with a guy the other day who, really senior across so many different things, and there are so many people who I wonder like it's hard to gauge how successful people are based on their resume because there are seriously like LinkedIn is the worst gauge for it because everybody is like a founder or a super entrepreneur.
Oh
For
yeah.
all their businesses could have made absolutely no money. Like I think it's like 0.01%.
Oh, my best stuff isn't on my resume
Yeah,
at all.
100%. And for a
It's
reason
like
too. Like
for a
for re-
reason. I'm protecting those
exactly.
assets. I don't need you to know that those are
For
behind
sure.
me.
100%. And like spending so much time with communities of guys, mostly on the East Coast who are really successful, it's like they do not want to showcase their best pieces. Unless you are the marketing engine for your brand and you are the brand voice, do not, you want to protect what you've built. So like you do not want to go out there and tell people about it if it's unique. So I think that's something that is, we see a lot of, and the most successful people in e-commerce have built brands that just don't make the spotlight because they just don't, they're trying to protect it and trying to protect their community. So, yeah, we definitely do see a lot of that, and yeah, it's hard to find though. I mean, there are diamonds in the rough, but it's hard to find.
There's diamonds in the rough. I think you find it basically like you said through networking and putting yourself out there, right? You can put yourself out there and people can say, "Yeah, I like this guy," right? And talk to him, see a little bit, in one-on-one conversation, you can share some of you share a lot more of their stuff than they would put
Yeah,
on publicly, of course, right? But still, people are going to keep kind of close to their shirt, the real private stuff, right?
yeah,
The real kind of
sure,
value stuff. And everybody who's actually that successful, they don't care anymore, right? They're like, maybe I'll work with you if I like you, but I'm not trying to sell
for
myself
sure.
anymore. It's just, if I can help somebody, and I kind of like doing it, I'm in the mood. There it
Yeah,
is.
no, definitely, yeah, for sure. Um, Yeah, it'd be interesting to see sort of how this founder dynamic changes. I mean, we're still seeing quite a large group of people, I think, building for wins instead of building for value. But you know, there are some really cool companies.
I think that's just the nature of it,
Yeah,
right? And the market flushes these people out fairly
yeah,
quickly.
yeah. We have seen that. I mean, we have seen that. I mean, we've seen a transition between some of. I mean, Airbnb is a good example. I mean, there's some other monsters that have really sort of turned a corner post 21 or 22 sort of crash, that have really tried to build businesses differently and, cut headcount to
Hmm.
improve their operational stack. And it's, we are seeing some positive changes, which is good. But I think we need it. And I think we need these corrections. Without these corrections, people would continue to build terrible businesses. So,
It's it's a terrible thing, right? But downtimes allow you to see what sort resources aren't being productive,
yeah,
and you get rid of old talent that is either not at the right stage for you anymore, not good in the first place, or it's just not motivated anymore. So
yeah. I think I mean,
you have to weed
it's
through that.
interesting. I watched, it was actually on a podcast. Actually, Zuckerberg was chatting about. This is an interesting sort of transition you're saying into not getting, sort of stale in the businesses you build and just keeping yourself interested is also your life outside the business, and your hobbies and so on. I think it's your distractions from work is so important to how productive you are at work and how motivated you are at it as well. But it's also making sure that your hobbies are immersive enough that you can't think about work when you're in it. Like for me, playing tennis, my phone is in my bag. Like I can't be on my phone when I'm playing tennis. It's
Uh-huh.
impossible.
Yeah, yeah,
So
you
whereas
can't.
if I'm in the gym and I'm lifting, I have a minute's break between sets. I'm on my phone in those minutes, and I'm probably getting notifications from work. So how can you build a hobby that's immersive enough that you are completely immersed in your hobby aside from work? And Zuck goes hydrofoiling or surfing, and obviously you have to be
Uh-huh.
so focused, otherwise you will fall off the board and probably be eaten by a shark. So you need to be like
Yeah.
super, super immersed in it. And I think spending some time around some folks that have built significantly bigger businesses than ourselves, or than myself certainly, is
No, no,
you
no,
know
me too. I'm
well, it's how they
I'm more pretty than I look,
no, I mean,
right?
I don't know, I have no idea, but it's how they manage their time, and the concept of working super hard and super long. It really is about productivity. You can not even start work at 9. You can start work at 11 if it means from 11 to 6 you're hyper productive with your time. But all hobbies have to be so immersive that you just can't think about work. Otherwise, it'll just be 24 hours work, 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 work. I think that's
You need to give the subconscious time to process things, and when your active mind is focused on the same kind of task or same task category, right? It blocks the subconscious largely, right? You can never fully
for
block it,
sure.
but you kind of unleash your subconscious to work on things when you force yourself to focus on
Yeah,
unrelated other
yeah,
things. You know,
yeah, definitely.
hitting that damn tennis
Yeah.
ball, or seeing if you can clobber the guy or make him chase something, I guess,
Yeah. I
right?
mean, even I think, do you know that motivational speaker? He's called Simon Sinek, I think, or Simon something like that.
Let me
I
see if
forget
I
I
recognize
forget
him.
his name. He has like ads everywhere, and I think he's one of the few people that I actually like enjoy watching, just because it doesn't seem so fake. He's just doing it 'cause it looks like he enjoys it, versus like some guys that are just selling invisible products, like you know, what's his
Okay,
name?
I've seen him. I haven't followed his stuff.
Yeah, no,
He's
cool. I
old.
mean,
Jeez, he's
I
50.
think his TED talks are just like fun. So like they're fun and motivational, but they generally have a point. Whereas you've got guys like Tony Robbins and stuff who are really just taking people's money, like ultimately, and like
Oh, right. Kind of
that's their
feels that way.
models.
Although, whoever, even if they get you some velocity, I think that's cool.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But if they're just giving you kind of feel good fluff, you should be watch out.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, but he's interesting. He talked about I'm 100% a victim of this. Like if it's date night or if I go out for dinner with my girlfriend or the family, I'll obviously have my phone, and my phone goes, let's say it's on the table, and I'll go, okay, I'm not going to be on my phone, and I'll turn my phone over. So it'll be, face down. But the point is, because the phone is on the table and it's already a point of discussion that I shouldn't be on my phone, the phone is actively taking priority that it has to be there
Mm,
just because it's there in the first
yep.
place. If my phone was left
Yeah.
back in my room or somewhere that's nowhere near
Hmm.
the vicinity, then
Yep.
you're
Yep.
communicating a message that the phone isn't the priority and you have to put it aside to make room for other things. So we were on holiday about a few weeks ago, and I literally said, "Let me try this." Interestingly, because like you just by instinct have your phone on you the whole time, obviously, like
Oh yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
So I said, "Okay, every time we go,
Especially when you have kids.
yeah, yeah, things might change then. I'll see. I'll try and see. At that point, it may be more like, okay, if something goes wrong, I do need my phone. But so I said, let me leave
Oh
my
no.
phone in the hotel room. So I left my phone just for dinner. That was it. Let me leave my phone in the hotel room. Left my phone in the hotel room for every dinner for 5 days. The quality of
Uh huh.
conversation.
First couple were
The
hard.
first, it was like there's definitely a bit of subconscious like tapping my pocket, like where is it, that
Uh
sort of
huh.
thing. But pretty,
Yeah. Somebody's phone vibrates across the room, and you're
yeah.
like, "Is it me?"
So it's definitely the quality of conversation when it's not even if I'm not looking on it, but it's turned over, like the quality of conversation when my phone is not in the area is significantly better because you are 100% committed to starting a conversation and a discussion without the worry that you need to check it. So I'm trying, I think, just tiny adjustments like that, allowing yourself like 20, 30 minutes of just not being on it at all allows you to do your other bits at higher quality or just not having it in the area. And he talks about that. And it was quite interesting to listen to that because I always think, well, surely if I have it but I'm not on it, it's the same. And the truth is, there's such a different psychology when your hobbies are still kind of work immersive compared to when they're not work immersive. And I think that's important.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's such a powerful topic. Maybe we should end this call on that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because this is. I think it's easy to overlook. I've gone on vacations where I just like workcations, and it
as
makes my
always.
wife nuts. This
Yeah,
year, I had one like 8-day vacation. It took me half that vacation to start to kind
for
of
sure.
unwinding,
Yeah,
and I think this is something we all need to work on. And not all of us, right? Some of us are better at it
yeah,
than others, but it's a powerful
definitely.
topic. So,
Yeah.
anything else you want to say before we end this one? This is a good one. I'm looking forward to another call with
Yeah,
you.
it'd be cool. We should do whenever there's another industrial boom, we can talk talk about it again. But no, I mean, I think it's just been great hanging out. Thank you for having me as well. It's not often you get time to, I think, speak holistically about your job or your industry, and I think for me, like writing has been one way to also just talk about it. It's easy to have your thoughts in your head, and I think like the beauty of podcasts is you can just hang out with people, and it's just
Writing is very therapeutic,
yeah, I agree.
awkwardly
I
enough.
agree. Yeah, I think it's a really cool.
I get more out of it than I would probably a psychologist.
Yeah, I think it's
Hard to say without
yeah, it's
experimenting, but
cool. I recommend Substack to people. Like, I hope it doesn't turn into like a LinkedIn. I hope it just stays kind of writer driven. I mean, there are people with tens of thousands of followers that just don't do it for the money, and like that's actually pretty cool. If you said to people, you can write and there's no way to profit from it, I think like Substack would still be like a decent platform. So I'm excited. It's a cool new venture I'm doing, and yeah, and likewise, maybe
awesome. Good
my
luck with that.
podcast career could take off after this.
You're right. You're gonna be world
Yeah.
famous
Joe
now,
Rogan
and
2.0. Yeah.
well, no, I mean you're a deep character. There's a lot of stuff I wanted to talk with you about, um, and we didn't even have a chance to really talk about Igloo at all. So there's
No, it's cool. It's
a lot about you that's interesting
all good.
still to
Yeah,
uncover. So I'm sorry I didn't get
we'll
too much
definitely
into
have
it.
another call, Philip, I think.
Awesome,
Cool.
awesome. Thank you, Andrew. It was a real
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Talk to you
Chat
soon.
soon. Thanks, Philip.